Nalan was a strong Apache girl until a rockslide crushed her legs during a hunt. Her tribe believed a person who couldn't walk was a burden, so when they moved camps, they abandoned her. Only her mother wanted to stay, but Nalan told her to go. Alone, she refused to die. She crawled, hunted with her hands, scared off coyotes, and slowly made herself strong again. One day she found 3 trappers, Thomas, Reed, and Ewan. They pitied her at first, but soon saw how smart and capable she was. She helped them survive by finding food and guiding them through winter. Thomas grew close to her and chose to stay with her when the others left. Together, they built a new life. Nalan proved her tribe wrong. Without legs, she was still brave, still strong, and far from useless. They said she was born during a windstorm, the kind that rattled the cedar planks of every home and filled the night with the voices of restless spirits. Her mother believed this was a sign that the girl would grow strong, wind-blessed, stubborn as the cliffs, resilient as river reeds. She named her Nalan, the one who is always growing. But no one in the tribe would remember her that way. They would remember her for the day she lost her legs, and for the way they turned their faces from her afterward. The Apache camp lay along the high desert, where the land stretched in russet folds and the sky felt close enough to touch. Nalan grew up chasing jackrabbits, gathering berries, and learning to braid her hair while her mother sang the old stories. Her father, a hunter respected among their people, placed a small bow in her hands when she was 6. She remembered his smile when she pulled back its tiny string for the first time. "Your arms are strong," he had told her. "Your legs even stronger. You were meant to run with the wind." But destinies could change with a single moment, and for Nalan, that moment came when she was 15. She had gone out with a small hunting party to gather quail and rabbits. It was late afternoon, shadows long and slanting, the air cool with the promise of evening. They had been trailing a wounded buck for several hours, following spots of blood that dotted the sand. The buck had disappeared into a narrow canyon. Nalan, who had the sharpest eyes, went ahead to scout. The men trusted her ability, though they teased her about her youth and slightness. She didn't mind. She liked proving them wrong. When the canyon walls drew tight, she felt the ground vibrate. At first she thought it was the echo of distant thunder, but the sky was clear. A hawk wheeled above in perfect silence. Then the vibration grew, became a rumbling roar. Her heart seized. She turned, sprinting toward the wider part of the pass, but the rock slide struck before she could escape. She remembered a deafening crash, the sting of dust, the shock of weight crushing down. She remembered screaming for help, though her voice had been buried beneath the boulders. The world dimmed to darkness and pain. Hours later, when they pulled her out, she was barely conscious. The lower part of her body lay twisted under a slab of stone. Her legs, once strong, once her father's pride, were mangled beyond saving. Blood seeped steadily from her torn skin. Her father wept openly as he carried her back to the camp. The healer did everything she could, but even the medicines of the grandmothers could not knit shattered bone and crushed flesh. By sunrise, the decision was made. Her legs were taken from her. For days, Nalan hovered in fevered dreams. When she awoke fully, it was to a world she did not recognize. Her people visited at first, bringing her water, soft cloths, broth. But their eyes held fear of her suffering, of her changed body, perhaps even of the spirits that had spared her life. Among her tribe, strength was valued above all else, the strength to hunt, ride, run, travel. A life without legs, they whispered, was a life that burdened the camp. Her mother stayed by her side, stroking her hair, humming the same songs of her childhood. But her father, broken by grief and shame, seldom entered the tent. His once proud daughter had been transformed into a reminder of failure, of weakness. He did not know how to face her. A council was held without her knowledge. Days later, she was told the tribe would migrate soon, following the game herds to new ground. There was no place, they said, for someone who could no longer walk. She could not keep up. She could not hunt. She would slow them, endanger them. It was better kinder to leave her behind. The spirits would decide her fate. Her mother fought against it, but tradition carried more weight than a woman's tearful pleas. In the end, her mother was forced to choose between staying with Nalan and abandoning her husband and sons. Torn in two, she wept for days. Nalan, seeing the torment in her mother's eyes, did the only thing she felt was right. "Go," she whispered. "You must go with them." Her mother kissed her forehead, salty tears dripping onto her cheeks. "I will return," she promised, though both of them knew it was a lie meant to comfort a dying hope. Nalan watched from her blankets as the tribe packed their belongings. No one met her gaze. They moved around her like she was already a ghost. When the final horse disappeared over the ridge, the silence felt like a second amputation. Alone. The wind whistled through the empty camp like a morning song. Nalan stayed alive out of sheer refusal to die. She dragged herself across the abandoned grounds, gathering what little had been left behind, a clay pot, a bundle of dried meat no one thought worth taking, a blanket, a broken knife. The pain was constant, but pain was something she still knew how to fight. She boiled water, cleaned her wounds, forced herself to eat even when sickness clawed her stomach. For weeks she remained where she had been left, trapped in a circle of loneliness. Nights were the hardest. Coyotes bayed close enough that she could hear their paws rustling the brush. She kept embers glowing through the darkness, feeding the small fire as little as she could afford. If it died, she knew predators would come close. She could not run. Once, a starving coyote approached anyway. Its eyes glinted with hunger as it crept toward her. Nalan's heart hammered, but her hands were steady. She took the broken knife, sharpened its tip on a stone, and held it out. When the animal lunged, she struck. Her aim was true. The coyote fell, writhing, then stilled. She stared at its body for a long time, trembling. Then she set to work skinning it. Its meat kept her alive another week. Survival became a rhythm. She conserved energy, rationed food, and learned how to move using her arms alone. She strengthened her upper body by necessity, pulling herself from one place to another. Days stretched into weeks. The loneliness changed, became a quiet companion rather than a torment. But even she knew she could not stay there forever. Without her tribe, without horses, she could not follow the bison herds or gather enough food. If she remained, she would starve. So one morning, she packed everything she had into a bundle, slung it across her shoulders, and began pulling herself toward the distant mountains. It took an entire day to travel a distance her people would have walked in half an hour. Her palms blistered. Her body screamed. But she kept going, inch by brutal inch. She traveled like that for weeks. Her arms became knotted with muscle. Her hands grew calloused and tough. She fashioned crude pads from animal hide to protect what remained of her legs. When she reached the foothills, she found streams and berry bushes. Rabbit snares became her new skill as she crafted them from strands of yucca fiber and set them with careful precision. Each captured rabbit felt like a victory the world had not intended for her. One evening, as she prepared to rest, she saw smoke curling through the trees. It was too controlled, too steady to be from lightning or wildfire. Humans. Her heart quickened. She had not spoken to another person since her tribe left her. Caution battled longing. She waited until nightfall, then crawled toward the glow. The fire belonged to a small group of outsiders, white trappers traveling through the region. Their voices carried easily. They complained about the dry season and their dwindling supplies. She approached the edge of their camp, knowing the danger but also knowing she could not turn back. A twig snapped beneath her hand. One of the men spun around, rifle raised. "Who's there?" Nalan froze. She could not outrun a bullet. When they saw her clearly in the firelight, their expressions shifted from alarm to shock. One man muttered something cruel under his breath. Another lowered his rifle slowly. "Hell," he said, "where's the rest of you?" Nalan lifted her chin despite her trembling. "I need water," she said. "And food." The men looked at one another, unsure. She appeared wounded, helpless, but her eyes held a steady flame that unsettled them. Finally, the youngest of them stepped forward, offering a canteen. That night, she learned their names, Thomas, Reed, and Ewan. They asked what had happened to her, but she shared only what she wished. Pity, she could not bear. They offered to let her rest by their fire for the night. In the morning, they assumed she would go her own way. She did not. When dawn broke, she asked if she could travel with them. Reed scoffed. "Travel with us? You can barely move." "I move differently," she replied. "Not less." Thomas, the youngest, seemed thoughtful. Ewan shrugged, uninterested either way. In the end, they allowed her to accompany them only because they feared leaving her alone might haunt their consciences. Within days, they realized she was more capable than they had expected. Nalan mended their torn clothing with tight, careful stitches. She warned them of a coming storm by the shape of the clouds. She identified edible plants they had been unknowingly ignoring. She trained herself to ride on one of their pack sleds, tying herself securely so that bumps wouldn't throw her. In return, they shared food and space and conversation. She learned a few English words, they picked up some Apache ones. An odd companionship formed on the dusty trails. One afternoon, while Thomas was checking traps, Nalan heard rustling in the underbrush. She called out, but there was no answer. The rustling grew closer. Instinct flared as she grabbed a stick and held it ready. The stalker stepped into view. A mountain lion. Her breath caught. The creature's amber eyes locked onto hers. It crouched low, muscles rippling, tail flicking. Alone, without legs, she was vulnerable, but she had not survived this long through fear alone. "Go," she whispered firmly, though she knew it would not obey. The lion inched forward. Nalan struck the stick against the ground, making a loud crack. "Go," she shouted. It lunged. Before it could reach her, a rifle shot rang out. The cat fell sideways with a snarling cry. Thomas emerged from the trees, panting. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said, though her heartbeat drummed in her ears. Thomas helped her back to camp. From that moment, his protectiveness over her grew. She began to trust him in ways she had not trusted anyone since her injury. As the months stretched on, the group made their way across rugged territory. Nalan's strength grew, her confidence sharper than the knife she now carried. She carved new tools, wove better snares, and even taught Thomas how to track deer using tiny details he had never noticed. The men, who once viewed her as a burden, began to see her as a valuable part of their survival. Winter approached with harsh certainty. Snowstorms became common, and the nights bit deep. Reed and Ewan spoke of turning back east. Thomas wanted to head south. Nalan remained silent until they asked for her counsel. "If we go east," she said, "we freeze. If we go south, food will be scarce. But there is a place north, near the mountains, where game gathers in winter. My people hunted there." Reed frowned. "Your people won't want us there." "They are not there anymore," she replied softly. "But I know the land." Her guidance saved them. They wintered in a sheltered valley, rich with deer and freshwater springs. Survival became easier. The men built her a small sledge to sit in, lined with fur and fitted with ropes so she could maneuver it herself. For the first time since her injury, she felt not abandoned, but supported, respected. Thomas grew especially close to her. He admired her intelligence, her fierce will. He often sat beside her in the evenings, asking about her childhood, her tribe, her dreams. She told him some things, though others she locked inside her heart. One night, as snow drifted softly from the sky, Thomas spoke quietly beside the fire. "They should never have left you," he said. "They believed they were right," she murmured. "But I am alive because I refused to be what they said I was." "What was that?" "Useless." Thomas shook his head. "Anyone who's spent a day with you knows that isn't true." Spring thaw arrived. The men decided to head toward the settlements. Ewan and Reed planned to sell furs and return east. Thomas hesitated. Nalin felt the coming change like a stone in her chest. "You will go with them," she said. "Maybe," he replied. "But I don't have to." She looked into his eyes, seeing a future she had allowed herself to imagine only in dreams. "Why would you stay with me?" He smiled in the warm, quiet way he had. "Because you're stronger than anyone I've ever known. And because I want to." Her throat tightened. She had been abandoned once. The fear of being left again was a deep scar. "I can go with you," she whispered. "If you want that." Thomas nodded. "I want exactly that." When they parted from Reed and Ewan, the two men clasped Nalin's hands with solemn respect. "You're a tough one," Reed said. "Stronger than all of us put together." "You proved us wrong," Ewan added. Nalin did not need their approval, but she accepted their words. Together, Nalin and Thomas traveled onward, building a life defined not by loss but resilience. Along the way, she crafted new tools, new skills, new ways of living. Her body had changed, but her spirit had not. She was still wind-born, still growing, still fierce. And she was no longer alone. For though her tribe had once declared her useless without legs, the world had proven them wrong. She carved her future from the earth itself inch by inch, mile by mile until she stood taller in spirit than any mountain around her. And the wind, the same wind that sang on the night of her birth, seemed to hum her name with every rising dawn,